is Boomer Life Lessons and Stories, and I'm Ron Cross. I'd like to share with you some information that has been very meaningful to me and helpful to me in my career, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But right now, I'd like to remind you to like, share, and subscribe. If you'd help me grow this video channel, if I've said something useful to you or perhaps meaningful, that would be very helpful to me. Like, share, and subscribe. Really tell others about us and let us help others as we may have helped you. Okay, so what is the topic for today? Well, the topic for today is what Stephen Covey's 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, what that book has meant to me and my career. So I guess we can start by simply talking about what is a highly effective person? What do they look like? A highly effective person is somebody that adds significant value to the corporation or the organization for which they work. These individuals have never met a challenge they didn't like, and they've always found a way, either directly or indirectly or through the help of others by identifying people that can help them. They've overcome all the obstacles either by going directly through them or around them. So these people literally will not take no for an answer. If it's doable, they're going to do it. And if it's perceived to be not doable by today's standards and technology, they're going to find a way in the not too distant future to actually make it happen. So these are people that organizations love. These people are dependable. They are where they need to be all the time, and they know how to get results for the team, for the project, and for the company. So these are the go-getters of the company. They are very effective in working with people and working around the obstacles, adding value wherever that value needs to be. There's one other characteristic of these people. These highly effective people are always in a mode of continuous learning. And that's something that we all must do as we go forward in time because of some previous lectures and videos that I've given here on YouTube in terms of if we're not growing and constantly learning, doing lifelong learning, we're obsoleting ourselves right out of the workforce. Right? So we have to be always arriving with the right skills at the right place and the right time so that we can service our companies and our customers. So that's what a highly effective person looks like. These are the people that every manager wants on their team. Now, what are the 7 habits? Well, I would like to preface before we get into those 7 habits by saying there's none of this that should be new to you. Perhaps it helps codify what these individuals look like. It puts it in a set of bullets that you can say, okay, check that, check that, check that. That is a highly effective person, right? So with that, the first habit that characterizes a highly effective person is being proactive. They're taking the proactive stance. They're not leaving for tomorrow what needs to be done today. And that's very, very important. These guys and gals are always scanning the horizon. They're interrogating their plan. They're looking at what needs to be done today, and if possible, what could be done today that is also scheduled for tomorrow or the next day or the next week. They're always forcing the situation in terms of adding value by trying to get ahead and stay ahead of the curve. Because nothing good happens if you get behind the curve, if you get behind schedule, if you let the problems mount up with no direct force working on those problems to resolve the problems and to get caught up. So highly effective people are looking for the opportunity always to be proactive. They never leave for tomorrow what could be done today, what should be done today, what is required to be done today. And when you look at those highly ineffective people, it's kind of like mañana, isn't it? Mañana. There's always time tomorrow. I remember in my early career, working at a defense and aerospace company back in the early 80s. Uh, I said to myself, and I actually said it to a couple of my colleagues, I said, well, it never seems like we have enough time to do the job right, but we always have time to do the job over. And I think I had it wrong. I think what it was that the teams were being pressed and stressed to be their very best, and they were always given stretch assignments. And these stretch assignments were typically just beyond the capability, just beyond the reach of each member of the team. And I realized that that was for our growth. That was for testing us and stressing us and grooming us and growing us for that next step in our career at that company. So perhaps I had that wrong in my early career. And what it was putting us in the stance of being a highly effective person by always striving to do the impossible, right? So that's what you're going to find. We're going to be proactive, the highly effective people. We're going to add value wherever we go and whatever we do. We're going to be in demand by the program managers and the directors and the vice presidents because our reputation is going to precede us. But we as individuals never put ourselves first. We put ourselves as second, third, or last because what is important to us, and we'll get to this in just a moment, is that everybody wins in the scenario. All right, how about number two? Well, number two is very thoughtful, and Covey had a lot of insight and put it in very simplistic terms. Begin with the end in mind. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you visualize a future state, what it meant to me. I visualized a future state. I created a plan that would, if I executed to the plan, that would get me to that future state. And therefore, knowing the future state, the end in mind, having the plan in place, I ordered my steps in such a way that I executed to the plan. And when the time arrived, I arrived at that future state. I arrived where the end was that I had in mind when all of the activities began. So what that's saying is you don't leave anything to happenstance. You always think about where you need to be at that future state, who needs to be with you, what type of work needs to have been done, the level of quality, and the type of functionality that was required to be there at the end date. And when you know all of that, and you know the resources and assets that you have at hand in order to achieve that, you're able to go off and do the job. So the thing is that highly effective people are always testing the waters to see, I know that future state. Now, can I get there a little quicker? Or can I get there with better quality, better than expected? Or can I get there with perhaps a few more options that perhaps project management will approve if it's achievable within the same time frame and the same budget? Because we know our customers always like what they want when they want it and at the cost they want it. And if they can get a little more for that, that's going to endear them to you as the provider of that service or product. So we always begin with the end in mind. Now, let me always say this too. There have been times in my career where I thought, how am I going to get past this? How am I going to survive this? It's almost unbearable. I'm having to live and breathe and do everything and spend all my time on this project with little time for anything else. I'm under great stress. It's almost impossible. It's almost impossible. But then I told myself, that is a self-defeating and self-fulfilling prophecy. I began to tell myself, what is the end state that you want to be in? And I visualized myself past all that difficulty, all that hardship, all that impossibility that I thought was there. I visualized myself in the end state and said, that's where I'm going to be on this date with everything that needs to be done. And you know what that did? It cleared my mind. It allowed me to create that plan, and it allowed me to order my steps in such a way that I was able to achieve that end state. So what I'm trying to say is sometimes we tell ourselves a story and our self-narrative that it's too hard, I can't survive this, I'm not going to put up with this. It's all this negativity, when all it takes is simply visualizing ourselves in that successful end state and realizing that it is important, then knowing what we need to do to get there by creating the plan and then ordering our steps to execute to the plan. So begin with the end in mind is a very powerful statement. You always need to know where the destination is in order to plan the journey. And that's what Covey is trying to tell you. Know the end state, know where you want to be, and everything else will fall in place with a little bit of pristine critical thinking. Next, number 3, Covey said, put first things first. Now, doesn't that make a lot of sense? But what does it really mean? Well, when we create that execution plan, we know that there are things that are needed to be done. Those are requirements. And there's things that could be done. They might be goals or niceties. But then there's things that shouldn't be done at all because they're just distractions. Now, when I'm talking to my students on campus, sometimes they'll come to my office and perhaps they didn't do as well on a quiz or exam or something. And we start talking about, well, how did they prepare for the quiz or exam? And did they stay in step with the class and the class lectures? And invariably what we end up talking about are the shiny objects. Oh, there's one. I know Miss Boomer's probably putting a shiny object up there. Well, there's one. And there's one. And we start chasing these shiny objects rather than putting first things first, those things that are necessary and sufficient to do the job, to get to that end state that we want to be. If we begin to chase all these shiny objects all around us, we'll never achieve the end state. We get distracted and we expend energy and emotional capital, and we never arrive at the critical journey of the destination of our journey. And highly effective people, they're very focused. They're laser focused on what it is that needs to be done. Sorry about that. What needs to be done. And they go off and make it happen. They'll either make it happen by themselves or through the team or with support functions outside the team, the subject matter experts, the gurus. They know how to make it happen. So they order their steps by executing to the plan and knowing what the critical path is. And for those of you that may not have had any classes in scheduling and things of that nature, the critical path is a sequence of steps that you do in the plan that if any one of those steps falls behind, the entire program falls behind. There's no slack time for each of the intermediate steps on the critical path. Whereas there may be parallel steps that need to be done that have slack time. So the highly effective person will put first things first. They will do those things that are sufficient and necessary to achieve the intermediate steps and deliveries until they get to the final destination where they need to be for their customer and for their company. So you always put, as a highly effective person, first things first. Now, this number 4 that Covey brings up, I mentioned perhaps in an earlier video. And I made the statement that said, if you win but the team loses, you lose. If the team wins, you win. So it's all about the team. So Covey says it in a little bit more succinct a way, and it's very, very good in terms of a layperson's type of vernacular. It's a win-win scenario. Have you heard that? He said the highly effective habit number 4 is think win-win. Now I'm going to add to that. What he really meant was in everything that you approach that's a challenge, and you have people that are talking maybe about going down a different path, you have to learn how to negotiate and collaborate and come up with a plan of attack where everybody wins. We may not get exactly like what we want to happen. They may not get exactly what they want to happen, but by thinking win-win, we keep the team together. We're able to deliver the optimal solution. because the optimal solution has to fit within the constraints of the three baselines: cost, schedule, and technical. And if anybody tries to go down a path that is non-optimal, that causes you to break or bust one of those baselines, you go over budget, or you get behind schedule, or you don't quite meet the technical requirement, then the team loses, right? So you have to collaborate and negotiate within the team environment with all those other functions and other personalities in the team. And you've got to do so by saying, I'm going to come up and work with these guys and gals where it's a win-win scenario. Everybody's going to get something out of it. If you go in thinking, I win, they lose because they are wrong, you're going to fail. That was just the alarm that tells me I'm already at 15 minutes. We've only got 3 more to go, so we'll stick to this right now. So you can't think, it doesn't matter about what the team does as long as I win. That is a flawed logic, because if the team fails, you fail. And you've got to think win-win, and you've got to collaborate, negotiate, and come up with scenarios and solutions where everybody gets a part of that win. Number 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Have you ever started to say something and other people talked over you? Do you think that there was any message received by these other people? Were they really listening to you? Were they really striving to understand the point you started to make when nobody was talking? You see, if everybody sought to first understand, there would be no talking over people. There would be a lot of listening going on. What perhaps all of us could do with a little more listening than talking, right? Because that's the way teams understand one another. So if you strive to understand what other people are saying first, then you seek to be understood second, you'll always be able to collaborate and negotiate in the most difficult of scenarios and situations with the team that you're on. The problem is, if you don't seek to understand what the other person is saying or trying to communicate, you may miss out on what the best or the optimal approach is, and you may go down the wrong path, and the team might not be as successful, or they might even fail. So we always want to tip our hat, so to speak, first to listening, and then we seek to be understood. If we're trying to talk over one another, nobody wins, nothing is accomplished, and it's kind of like that wheel laying on its side, turning round and round and round. There is no progress, right? The only progress a wheel can make if it's righted and rolls down the road, and that's when you carry the team with you. So first seek to understand, and then to be understood. And that's a great insight by Stephen Covey. Now, if I could just pause here just for a second, I want you to see how this has benefited me throughout my career. I molded my actions around these habits of highly effective people. Some of them I were executing to before I read the book. But in spite of all this, there's value here, so I highly recommend that you go out and get a copy of Stephen R. Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and read it from cover to cover and put it on your shelf. Take it off the shelf every now and then and refresh yourself in it. And it will energize you and allow you to become something more than you presently are today. Now, speaking about becoming something more, that's number 6. The 6th habit of highly effective people is to always strive to synergize. Now, what is synergy? Synergy says that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. You can take all the skills of each individual person and all the knowledge of each individual person, and if they execute on their own, they're only going to be successful based on the bounded rationality and understanding that they have individually. But as we come together as a team and we collaborate and negotiate and communicate, the team becomes more knowledgeable and more capable and is able to achieve greater things and solve more complex problems than any one individual on the team. So the highly effective people are always scanning the horizon and looking at the team and looking to see where they can create more synergy, because they want to become more than what you are as individuals. As a matter of fact, in my career, it often seemed that when we negotiated contracts with the customer, there was something about a requirement that one of the customers would want that was in the contract that was beyond the present day technology. It might be just a little bit beyond, just a little reach beyond. And we signed the contract anyway. Now, why did we do that? Well, we knew from our history that we were dealing with knowledge workers. We were dealing with critical thinkers. We were dealing with some of the most capable people in the world, these highly effective people. And we knew that if the contract was 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, we had enough time to come up with a scenario, a solution, a process that would allow us to meet the impossible today, but possible tomorrow. And invariably, we always were able to do that. And that was through synergy. The team is more capable than the individual. And the last, because we were talking about always trying to improve and strengthen ourselves by what we know, sharpen the saw. Continuously sharpen the saw. Now, this is a kind of an interesting metaphor that Stephen Covey uses, because we know that through the use of the saw, if we don't take time to sharpen our skills, that saw is going to get dull. And over time, if we never perfect or sharpen the saw after it's been sharpened once, it's going to become useless. Now, you translate that into skill set. We as individuals on the team, if we don't try to stay current, because we do live in an environment of constant change, right? Go back and look at the episode I did on Heraclitus's quote, "The only constant is change." We always have to be arriving and equipping ourselves with new skills that are just in time to meet the customer's need. Because, if we see a need today that we need to fill for our customer, but we haven't quite got the skill sets to do it, we're behind the curve. And if we continually do that as a team, as a program, as a company, we're going to lose to the competition. And if we lose to the competition, that's not good for anybody within the corporation, and it's not good for your customers, and soon you'll lose your customers to the competitor. So what we always strive to do, and what the highly effective people have always striven to do, is to always practice lifelong learning and to continually be arriving with the right skills at the right time to service the current needs of the customer. And I believe that truly that was at the heart of Stephen R. Covey's sharpen the saw, meaning that we've got skill sets, but if we continually do not refine those skill sets or learn new ones to accompany them, we're going to become obsolete, and obsolescence will drive us right out of the market space. And companies have actually gone out of business because they chose not to keep up with the pace of change, nor the current needs of their customers. So that's it. The highly effective habits, the 7 habits of highly effective people in Covey's book. Let's just recap. Be proactive, number 1. Number 2, begin with the end in mind. Number 3, put first things first. Number 4, always strive to think of a win-win scenario. Try to put a win-win solution in place where everybody wins. Number 5, first seek to understand, then to be understood. Put others first, listen to them, clarify, and then strive to be understood on your part. Synergize, create more value as a team than you could possibly create as an individual. And always continuously sharpen the saw. Continually arrive with new skills, new capability to meet the customer's needs today. Not yesterday, but today. And with that, my friends and fellows, gals, all my best, and I will see you in the next Boomer Life Lessons and Stories. Take care and be careful.